Title: ATO updates work from home deduction methods, affecting tax returns for millions of Australians. The Australian Taxation Office (ATO) has revised the methods for claiming work from home expenses, potentially affecting almost 5 million Australians and their tax deductions this year. The new guidelines allow for a simpler, unambiguous method of calculating expenses, but also enforce stricter record-keeping requirements. Property landlords and crypto investors are also being scrutinized as part of the ATO's clampdown on tax compliance. Taxpayers are advised to familiarize themselves with the updated guidelines before filing their tax returns. Inquest to probe WA man's disappearance during outback pig hunting trip. An inquest into the disappearance of Western Australian man, Jeremiah Rivers, during a pig hunting trip in southwest Queensland will begin on Monday. Rivers' disappearance has left his family and friends, across remote Western Australia, heartbroken as detectives continue to search for answers. The case has baffled investigators, who have found no trace of the 35-year-old since he vanished in July 2022. The inquest will be held in St. George and is expected to hear from witnesses who were on the hunting trip with Rivers. Canberrans like Hayley rely on blood donations to stay healthy, but Lifeblood Australia says it needs more donors. Lifeblood Australia has issued a call for more blood donors due to a shortage in the past month, with over 40% of donors cancelling their appointments. For people like Hayley Teasdale, who needs around 130 plasma donations every year to avoid life-threatening infections, this could have devastating consequences. "I rely on blood donations to stay healthy," said Hayley, and it's alarming to hear that the number of donors has dropped so much. The Red Cross has assured the public that donating blood is safe and crucial to saving lives. Title: Australian soccer's governing body collects betting revenue from all levels of the game. Football Australia, the governing body of soccer in Australia, is profiting from local bets placed on games, including amateur suburban matches. The organisation has reportedly signed secret deals with betting companies to collect a cut from every wager placed. While some may argue that these deals help to fund the sport, others are concerned about the potential for corruption and the negative impact on the integrity of the game. The revelations have sparked a debate about the relationship between sports and gambling, and the need for greater transparency in the industry. Title: Safe, Calm, Connected, Happy, Surf Therapy helping young people in WA. 21-year-old Peter Wissink has struggled with depression and anxiety due to a difficult upbringing, but a surf therapy program has helped him reconnect with the environment and improve his mental health. The program, run by not-for-profit Flow State Margaret River in Western Australia, combines clinical group therapy sessions with surfing. Mental health therapist Rob West believes the ocean has a calming effect on participants and helps them practice breathing and mindfulness techniques. Surf therapy has grown in popularity worldwide, and a recent review found it improved both physical and psychosocial health. Surfing has taught Wissink important life skills such as staying present and focusing on what he can control. Title: Study shows Aboriginal adults with cannabis face police bias. A new report from the Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research is raising concerns of police bias against Aboriginal adults caught with cannabis in New South Wales. The study found that these adults are less likely to be offered a caution under the New South Wales Cannabis Caution Scheme, and more likely to be charged and prosecuted, compared to non-Aboriginal adults. The study also suggests that the current eligibility criteria for the scheme may have indirect bias against Aboriginal people. The findings highlight the need for police reform and fairer drug policies in Australia. Title: Hollywood radio star takes on remote Australian station. Ian James, a seasoned radio presenter, has left Hollywood to manage Wonki Upernanupuru Radio in Fitzroy Crossing, a remote Aboriginal community radio station in Western Australia's Kimberley region. Despite facing one of his toughest roles yet, with the community recovering from a record-breaking flood and a talent drain in the area, James sees a silver lining for the station's future. Flood coverage helped them find a younger audience by broadcasting everything on social media. He hopes to utilize and give back this content to everyone. James is amazed by the way the town rallied after the flood and is excited to be a part of that journey. Finding lost shipwrecks is a side hustle for Australia's maritime research vessel. Australia's maritime research vessel, RV Investigator, has rediscovered the MV Blythe Star, a cargo ship that sank off Tasmania's southwest coast almost 50 years ago. With only 7 survivors of the 10 crew members, Blythe Star's location remained a mystery until now. Maritime archaeologists had a hunch about its location, and the Investigator confirmed its location while en route to study an underwater landslide. The vessel has technology that allows historians to find ships in the deepest waters, where divers cannot safely access. The Investigator has also found the SS Iron Crown in 700 meters of water in Bass Strait. Title: Retired musician's love song featured in blockbuster film after 52 years. Australian musician Paul Shirley's love song has finally found its groove after being featured in a blockbuster film. The retired rock and roll musician was surprised when a streaming service contacted him to feature his song in the film The Portable Door. The song, written 52 years ago, had not gained much attention until now. Shirley expressed his gratitude for the opportunity, saying, "It's like a dream come true." The film's director praised the song's lyrics and said it perfectly captured the film's romantic theme. Shirley hopes his newfound success will inspire other artists to keep creating. Kerry lost her daughter and ex-husband to MND. Now, her son is living with the condition. Kerry's life has been touched by MND 3 times over. Her daughter and ex-husband both lost their battles with the condition, and now her son is living with it. Kerry is determined to find a cure, and she's not alone. Experts are making strides in research and treatment options, bringing hope to families affected by MND. Kerry remains optimistic that a cure will be found soon, so that no more families have to suffer the devastating effects of this disease. WA Department of Justice warns Banksia Hill staff of potential imprisonment. The Western Australian Department of Justice (DOJ) has been accused of threatening and intimidating youth custodial officers who speak about the state's juvenile detention facilities. The CPSU, the union that represents these officers, alleged that the department sent an email warning staff at Banksia Hill Detention Centre and Unit 18 at Casuarina Prison that they may face imprisonment if they discuss ongoing investigations, disturbances, or high-profile individuals with non-custodial personnel. The DOJ refuted the claims, saying that staff could report their concerns to facility management or the Corrective Services Executive. Title: Western Australia farmers plead with dog owners after fatal livestock attacks. Farmers in Western Australia's Wheatbelt region have called on dog owners to better protect their livestock. Authorities have reported the deaths of over 100 sheep and the euthanasia of 2 dogs in the Shire of Northam alone over the past 6 weeks. The local pound is at capacity, and police are investigating whether the dogs involved in these attacks are domestic or feral. Farmers and rangers have called on owners to keep their pets on a shorter leash and be aware of the damage they can cause. The Shire of Northam has set up dog traps, increased patrols, and is working with the Department of Biosecurity to set up surveillance cameras. Link. Title: Sunshine Coast Council evicts tiny home residents, leaving them fearing homelessness. The Sunshine Coast Council is forcing vulnerable residents living on Jacqueline Morton's 32-acre property to leave their sustainable tiny homes. The council claims the structures are not up to code and pose a risk to residents. However, Morton and some of the residents argue that the evictions are unjust and that they have nowhere else to go. This situation has highlighted the ongoing struggle for affordable housing and the need for better regulation around alternative forms of housing. Tenants forced to consider sharing rooms as rental crisis bites. Young Australians are struggling with the ongoing rental crisis as rent rates continue to rise. The median weekly income for an individual in Tasmania is just $701, and there are only 15 available properties under $300 per week. Renters are now forced to share rooms in order to keep a roof over their heads, while others are moving back in with their families to save for a deposit. Australia's Reserve Bank Governor, Philip Lowe, suggests that having more people living in share houses could ease the pressure. However, renters like Alivia do not want to live with randoms just to get a roof over their heads. Title: The Sunset Clause, a legal loophole that's robbing homeowners. A Gold Coast developer has used a controversial sunset clause to cancel Daniel Lees's land contract, leaving him priced out of the housing market. The clause allows developers to cancel a contract if the land fails to settle within 18 months, and then sell it for a higher price. Queensland's housing market has been rocked by such practices, prompting lawmakers to consider new legislation. Under the proposed reform, a developer would need a court order to cancel such contracts, and a compensation scheme would be established to protect buyers. Title: Supercharged poo-eating algae speeds up waste treatment. Queensland, Australia, a trial of supercharged algae that can consume wastewater in record time has been hailed a success. The algae, which has been genetically modified with the addition of specially selected bacteria, ate wastewater in just 2 weeks rather than the typical treatment time of 60 days. The trial was carried out at a waste treatment facility in Lockyer Valley and could revolutionize wastewater treatment across the world. As populations grow and the demand for clean water increases, this discovery could go a long way in protecting the environment and human health. China's prepared for battle over the Dalai Lama's reincarnation, and survival is at stake. As the Dalai Lama ages, China prepares for a battle over his reincarnation, with the Chinese Communist Party (CCP) seeking to control who becomes the next spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhists. China's goal is to appoint a compliant Dalai Lama who will not challenge its authoritarian rule in Tibet. This could lead to a future with 2 competing Dalai Lamas, one representing the CCP and the other in exile who receives traditional religious training. The stakes are high as the survival of Tibetan Buddhism is at risk. The international community must act to preserve the religious freedom of Tibetans. Title: Geothermal Hub Revival, Greenvale Energy plans Longreach plant using hot rocks technology. Australian mining company Greenvale Energy and Serra Phi Energy are conducting a feasibility study for a geothermal project in Longreach, central West Queensland. If successful, the plant would be the only working geothermal plant in the country and could be operational by 2026. The project will use advanced geothermal systems, meaning the technology will not access underground water supplies like traditional geothermal projects, but instead harness the power of hot rocks. Power generated by the plant would supply the township of Longreach, and excess power would be pushed to the national grid. Greenvale Energy CEO Mark Turner is confident that once the plant is up and running, it will be followed by others. Title: Carol Martin honoured with Order of Australia Medal for service to Parliament and Indigenous community. Carol Martin, the first Aboriginal woman elected to any Australian Parliament, has been honoured with the Order of Australia Medal. Martin began her political career over 2 decades ago and was elected as the state member for the Kimberley in 2001. She has served the West Australian community in various areas, including business, social work, and as an artist. However, she considers her work representing the Kimberley community to be her greatest achievement. Martin believes that the upcoming referendum on the creation of an Indigenous voice to Parliament is the recognition Aboriginal people need, and that Australia needs to change. Farmers call for rethink on Pacific Worker Scheme as union warns against hysteria. Fruit and vegetable growers are urging the Australian government to reconsider changes to its Pacific Worker Scheme, warning it would result in fewer workers from the Pacific being employed. The Pacific Australia Labour Mobility (PALM) scheme mandates that workers must be offered 30 hours of work per week. From next year, new guidelines will ensure workers are offered 30 hours per week, with the end of averaging the hours over the duration of the employment. Farmers say this will make it harder to employ workers via the scheme and instead have to focus on employing backpackers. The union has described the changes as sensible. Aussie apiarists to wax lyrical at global gathering of young beekeepers. 3 young Tasmanians, Reuben, Lilith, and Audrey, are set to represent Australia at the International Meeting of Young Beekeepers in Slovenia. The event is the largest annual gathering of its kind worldwide, where 120 teens aged 12 to 18 from 40 countries will test their knowledge and skills. The trio secured their spots after competing in a national competition, which tested their beekeeping knowledge and skills. Their journey to Slovenia will be funded by selling honey, fundraising activities, and sponsorships. The Tasmanian Junior Beekeepers, a not-for-profit organisation, provided young people with access to beekeeping, and the 3 participants are members. Title: Melbourne Storm humiliates Cronulla Sharks to climb into top 4. The Melbourne Storm thrashed the Cronulla Sharks 54-10 in front of over 20,000 fans in Melbourne, climbing to 3rd place on the ladder. The Storm's Queensland duo, Cameron Munster and Harry Grant, ran rings around Cronulla playmaker Nicker Hines, who is the frontrunner to replace injured Nathan Cleary for New South Wales. Despite his Dally M medal, fans say Hines cannot deliver under pressure. The Sharks look devoid of energy, with their completion rate at 60% and 56 missed tackles. Melbourne's 9-try performance secured their position in the top 4, while Cronulla dropped to 5th. Title: Calls for Indigenous Voice to Parliament dominate Barunga Festival's anniversary event. Australia's Barunga Festival, a 3-day event in the Northern Territory, was dominated by calls for the Indigenous voice to Parliament. The event marked 35 years since Indigenous leaders presented the Barunga Statement to Prime Minister Bob Hawke, requesting a treaty and formal recognition of Indigenous people. All 4 Aboriginal land councils across the Northern Territory presented Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney with the Barunga Voice Declaration, urging Australians to support the voice to Parliament in the upcoming referendum. The festival also featured attractions showcasing Indigenous culture, including traditional dances, sports, and cultural workshops. Title: Push for Independent Advocate for Tenants in South Australia. South Australia could establish an independent advocate for tenants under new reforms set to be presented to the state's parliament this week. The proposed office would offer legal advice to renters and represent them in the tribunal process if necessary. The changes aim to address ongoing rental affordability challenges and reduce power disparity between landlords and tenants. The proposal has been welcomed by the South Australian Council of Social Service, which is concerned about the lack of support for renters dealing with issues that arise during their rental period. The government has said it is considering further amendments to the Act, including opportunities for independent advice and support. Title: Aged care closures trigger hospital bed crisis as operators blame funding, staff shortages. The Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health District in New South Wales is facing a crisis as an increasing number of aged care homes close their doors, leaving more than 400 beds vacant. This has created a situation where more people are waiting in hospital for a transfer to aged care, occupying much-needed beds. The Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health District recorded the highest number of patients in acute hospital beds waiting for an aged care placement. While the federal government has committed $11.3 billion to adopt the Fair Work Commission's ruling to give aged care workers a 15% pay rise, there is still uncertainty about who will pay for the ballooning costs of aged care. Title: New South Wales Swifts clinch minor premiership in Super Netball. Description: The New South Wales Swifts have secured the minor premiership in Super Netball after a clinical performance against the Queensland Firebirds, winning 78-65. The Swifts have now won 9 consecutive games, and will enter the finals as favourites to claim their 3rd championship in 5 years. Meanwhile, the West Coast Fever have secured a valuable victory over the Giants 72-61 in Perth, putting them in 2nd place on the ladder, 6 points behind the Swifts. The Fever can secure a top 2 finish and a place in the major semi-final by defeating Collingwood in Launceston next week. Publication date: Sunday the 11th of June 2023. 7 hours 28 minutes and 1 second plus 0000 link. The New South Wales Swifts have clinched the minor premiership in Super Netball with a commanding 78-65 win over the Queensland Firebirds. The Swifts have now won 9 consecutive games and will enter the finals as favourites to claim their third championship in 5 years. Meanwhile, the West Coast Fever secured a valuable win over the Giants 72-61, putting them in second place on the ladder behind the Swifts. The Fever can secure a top 2 finish and a place in the major semi-final by defeating Collingwood in Launceston next week. It's shaping up to be an exciting finals series in Super Netball. Title: Russian mercenary group Wagner refuses to sign contract with Defense Ministry. Russia's most powerful mercenary group, Wagner, has refused to sign a contract with the country's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu. The minister had ordered all volunteer detachments to sign contracts with the ministry to increase the effectiveness of the Russian army. Though the ministry did not mention Wagner in its public statement, it was speculated that the order was an attempt to bring the mercenaries under the government's control. Wagner founder Yevgeny Prigozhin said the group, though completely subordinate to Russia's interests, would not sign the contract, and that its highly efficient command structure would be damaged by doing so. Title: Nicola Sturgeon arrested in connection to SNP funding investigation. Former Scotland First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has been arrested as part of an ongoing police investigation into the Scottish National Party's funding. Ms. Sturgeon was taken in for questioning and has consistently stated her willingness to cooperate with the investigation. Her arrest is a blow to the SNP, which campaigns for Scottish independence from England. Ms. Sturgeon stepped down as First Minister in February after 8 years in the role, citing her divisiveness. The police investigation is looking into the use of over £600,000 $1.2 million raised by independence campaigners in 2017. Russia arrests U.S. musician on drug dealing charges. U.S. musician and former paratrooper Michael Travis Leak has been arrested in Moscow on drug dealing charges, according to a statement from Moscow's courts of general jurisdiction. The former songwriter and musician was accused of running a drug dealing operation involving young people. He was shown in a court cage on Russian state television. Leak was a member of the Lovinok rock band. If found guilty, he could serve up to 12 years in prison. The U.S. State Department confirmed Leak's detention and that officials from the U.S. Embassy attended his arraignment on June 10. Concerned Catholics want investigation into allegations of inappropriate behavior by head of Catholic schools in Tasmania. Concerned Catholics of Tasmania is calling for an independent investigation into Catholic Education Tasmania following allegations of inappropriate behaviour by its executive director, Gerard Gaskin. Dr. Gaskin apologised to staff after finding out that someone had made a formal complaint about the unwelcome greeting hugs he'd given to 2 female colleagues. The group has called for an independent consultant to carry out an investigation to identify the nature of the current culture and the source of tensions at CET, including the Tasmanian Catholic Education Office. A spokesperson for the Catholic Archdiocese of Hobart said any suggestion of wrongdoing by Dr. Gaskin was incorrect. A man dies and 2 rescued after boat overturns near Port Douglas. A 54-year-old man has tragically lost his life in a boating accident off far north Queensland. The group called emergency services to the Port Douglas coast near Double Island last night after their boat began sinking. An air and sea search was conducted, and 2 men aged 24 and 26 were rescued from near an upturned boat. Unfortunately, the 54-year-old man, from Napranum, was found deceased. The accident is a reminder of the importance of safety when boating. Upgraded murder charge to be laid after death of police officer who was run over and dragged under car. A 23-year-old man who allegedly ran over and killed a WA police officer after a pursuit in Perth will be charged with his murder. Constable Anthony Woods, 28, died last night when his family made the decision to turn off his life support. While paying tribute to Constable Woods this morning, WA Police Commissioner Colonel Blanche announced the man in custody over the incident, Reagan Ainsley Chown, would have his charges upgraded. He also said a full police funeral would be offered to Constable Woods's family. What we know about the fatal Hunter Valley wedding bus crash. At least 10 people have died and 25 more have been injured in a fatal bus crash in NSW's Hunter Valley. The bus was carrying more than 30 passengers who had attended a wedding at Wandon Estate at Lovedale, in the Hunter's popular winery district. The bus overturned at a roundabout on Wine Country Drive as it was entering the Hunter Expressway. The bus driver, a 58-year-old man, has been arrested and police expect to lay charges. Investigations into the incident are still at an early stage and Acting Assistant Commissioner Tracy Chapman declined to comment on whether speed could have been a factor. Source: